Oh, and there we go. We are indeed live at the moment. You know, I should probably mention I had a couple little minor freakouts before we started the live stream today, Darren. The
Okay.
first was that as I was setting up the scenes here in Ecam, I went to the show start scene, the countdown scene. You know, this one here. I'm going to switch to it real quick. This one,
Oh yeah, yeah.
right? Yeah. So I went to that scene and it said, we're starting at noon. I went, wait a minute, am I completely forgetting when we start the show? I thought we were starting at 1. And I had a very, very minor brief freak out that
Uh-oh.
we were supposed to have
Time zones
started like
again.
40 minutes earlier.
Oh.
And I was like, oh
Uh,
man, Darren's waiting for me. And then I remembered, no, it was the reaction time episode was our last episode. So we did start at noon, right?
indeed, indeed.
So that freak out was over. Then I opened up my show notes. So generally what I do is I type up all my show notes, and still to this day I use Omni Outliner to do it. This time I was taking some notes in both Apple Notes and in TextEdit, and so I was trying to consolidate all those notes into Omni Outliner. I saved the document in Dropbox as I do. I have a temp folder in Dropbox. I save it in there,
Hmm.
and then I come over to my this Mac, the live streaming Mac. I come over here, open it up, and we go. All my notes were gone. They were
It's
all gone.
gone.
They were all gone. Nothing was there. Well,
Of course.
so I immediately rolled over because I'm in a rolling chair. I rolled over to the other Mac and I said, "Are my notes still here?" And fortunately they
Wait
were
a
still
minute.
there. So here's the deal. And I don't know if you run into this. Do you use Dropbox at all on your Macs? Do you use
I
Dropbox? Or...
used to use, yeah, I used to use it religiously. I used to use Dropbox, and I also used OneDrive as well.
Okay.
Um, but I sort of, as I was migrating lots of services and things over to Apple built-in things,
So no,
I
iCloud.
decided, well, do I need anything more than iCloud? And I decided, no, I don't. So I've streamlined everything now. So I don't use
Yeah.
Dropbox anymore, and I don't use um, OneDrive. Although I do occasionally jump into the web interface of one of those and then just drop file onto the website rather than using a client sync.
Which works great. Um, the thing I've noticed is that this new edition of Dropbox, the one that integrates into the location section of the Finder, the
Yeah.
new edition of it tends to kind of just stop working. And I don't know if it's
Oops.
yeah, I don't know if it's a bug in macOS or if it's a bug in Dropbox. Um, I'm leaning towards a bug in Dropbox, but effectively what happens is you go into your Dropbox folder on your Mac and it says the Dropbox app is not running. And I
Okay.
look up at the menu bar and there's the Dropbox app. It's running just fine. And yet the Finder is not recognizing that it's running, so it's not doing any of
Uh,
that background syncing like it should be doing.
but
Uh,
is the visual cue that it's running actually, does that actually really mean it's running? Or because there's quite a few components, there might be something it relies on that isn't actually running behind the scenes that's just invisible.
that is an excellent question that I do not know the answer to. But the solution
Excellent.
is to quit Dropbox and restart it,
Turn it off and on again. Yeah.
and then Finder will actually put a ribbon across the top of a Finder window that says Dropbox is not running. And oddly, it says something along. I'm paraphrasing here. Something along the lines of, "Would you like to remove it?" Well, no,
Oh,
I don't
yes.
want to remove it. I want it to work.
Oh,
So
that's the thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, as soon as as soon as macOS uh, doesn't find something that you've got a shortcut for, it always the first thing it suggests is, "Oh, you want to delete it? Then you must want to delete this because it doesn't exist."
yeah. How about fixing it? How about fixing it instead?
Oh no, no, no fixing it. You just delete
No,
it.
can't do that. Um, and I'm gonna say hi to Brian, who is joining us in the chat room. By the way, he is at and no offense, Brian, he is at an Econ conference today, and that truly does not sound like something I would enjoy. An economics conference. I'm sorry. I just
Oh, economics. Yeah.
no. I'm sure it's great. Mike says, I would not enjoy an
Snores.
econ conference. I don't
Snoresville.
think. Yeah, I can sit. You know, here's the thing, though. We all have our little areas of nerddom, right? And
Oh,
my
yeah,
area
yeah.
of nerddom is, well, areas of nerddom would be, Apple computers, classic computing, Lego, stuff like that. I can sit through any of that stuff, eyes wide open the entire time. Other people be like, Lego, oh, So I get
Oh,
it.
Lego's fantastic. It's just too expensive. Have you seen the latest the Death
The
Star
Death
model?
Star. Oh, that's
It's
amazing.
incredibly
It's a
expensive. It is
thousand
amazing,
dollars.
but exactly $1,000 for some plastic bricks that you stick together.
Yeah, but but once you stick
It's
them together,
amazing.
it's incredibly awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is very true.
I will not be buying it, by the way. I
No,
will not be
no,
buying it.
no. I will accept it as a gift, but
Yeah. I have been known to purchase sets that are in the range of, $250 to $300.
yes.
As most notably a amazing Batmobile set. I should
Okay,
say
yeah.
60s Batman television show Batmobile.
Ah, yes,
Um,
yeah. You gotta get that's the one.
I mean, the thing is like, 2 feet long. It's huge. Um,
Excellent.
excellent set. And well, heck, you can see back
Well,
here,
yeah. There's yeah.
yeah,
There you go.
that was not a $200 set, but it was, oh, and then there's
No,
let's see.
I did drool slightly over the Millennium Falcon Lego model, but that was quite expensive as well.
That was not anywhere near $1,000, but it was an
No,
expensive
it's
set.
cheap
Yeah,
at half price.
half price. Oh dear, oh dear. So anyway, yeah, easy to nerd out, easy to say, yeah, I'm going to go to MacStock, a conference about Apple products, and people who come are enthralled. They enjoy the presenters. We have amazing talks, but I also know people who come along with somebody who's attending MacStock, and they say,
And
"Yeah,
they're not
no,
quite into it.
I'm
Yeah.
going to go antiquing today instead." So, yeah, I get it. I
Bless them.
tease,
Yeah,
Brian.
no
I
problem.
tease. All right, so we did a little run of the show before. We don't have to do a run of the show now live. Um, as usual, a little intro. Toss it over to you for your thoughts on the topic, and I can't wait till I was debating on the title for this episode, and the one
Oh, yes.
I came up with is not what I wanted to use. What I wanted to use, I thought perhaps YouTube and or Apple might have trouble with.
Oh, I
If I
see.
use
Oh,
the
you're
title.
skating close to the line. I see. Oh, that would be brave.
Yeah, well, I wanted to use the word ugly ass. And I thought
Oh,
that
I
that,
see.
and I
Yes,
thought that
best not.
that might not pass the muster at YouTube or Apple when it comes to titling an episode. It's not going to, saying it
They're
within the
very
show is not going
sensitive,
to be a
very so.
problem.
Yeah,
But having it as the title of an episode, I thought, well, yeah,
best not.
maybe I better avoid that. So I came up with a little bit different title, a little more toned down, but
Well, yeah, I mean that's very minimal compared to some of the things I've heard said on Reddit about.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. But
some people are losing their minds over there.
rather rather than take my chances, I figured I'd just change the title. But at least I'll tell people. We'll tell people what I wanted to call it. But there you go. We'll talk about that.
A variation.
A variation of it. So perhaps we should get started. What
Well,
say
yeah,
you?
it is. Go for it. Yeah, it's about that sort of time, isn't it? Yeah.
In fact, we're ahead of time. You know, we'll often babble on for 30 minutes, but hey, 10 minutes in, we're getting
Yeah,
started.
that's
We're being super efficient here.
yeah. Uh, it's amazing, especially since we haven't done this for how many weeks is it? Was it 2, 3 weeks?
Well, it would have been Apple's event was the last one. Reaction Time was our
Oh
last
yes, of
episode.
course.
Yeah,
Reaction
for
time. Yeah,
the
yeah.
iPhone 17, which I understand you may have some news on, but we'll talk about that in just a second.
Yeah, indeed.
Um, all right, let's get started. I will do the intro and we'll go from there. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. It's For Mac Eyes Only, episode number 459 for October 11th. Let me say that again. I shouldn't sound surprised when I say that. It's For Mac Eyes Only, episode number 459 for October 11th, 2025. Tahoe is ugly. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Eyes Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to talk Tahoe is For Mac Eyes Only co-host Darren Davies. Hi Darren, how you doing?
Hello there, Mike.
No comments about the title?
No,
We'll get to that in a
no,
moment.
I was expecting something like that. Yeah.
And remember, we do normally record For Mac Eyes Only live on YouTube the second and fourth Saturday of the month. And if you would like to come hang out, ask questions, and be part of our live studio audience, be sure to subscribe to the show at youtube.com/FMEOTV. And if you are joining us live on YouTube, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat room right over here to my right. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to drop them in there and we will try to address them here on the show. So, Darren, for good or bad, this is going to be our Tahoe episode because, as we all know, macOS Tahoe 26 was released while we were on a small break the last few weeks, and it brings with it a number of fairly major changes to how we interact with our Macs and our other Apple devices. Some of those changes include a new phone app for the Mac, live activities, that's part of continuity with the iPhone, a small overhaul to Spotlight to better highlight what it can do for us, Apple Intelligence-driven shortcuts, and yes, liquid glass, which is admittedly what I'm going to focus on this episode. But you were ready to upgrade all your devices the day of release. In fact, I think it was an email or a text. You sent me something and said the app
I did.
the operating system upgrades were released and I am upgrading today. And from what you've shared, Darren, it seems like you've had a pretty good experience so far.
Yeah.
Would you like to share some of your favorite aha or oh wow moments with the
Indeed.
various
And
operating systems?
yeah, no problem. And luckily, I didn't have too many oh dear moments.
Oh dear.
So indeed, most of them were oh wows or positives. Some of them were oh, this is possibly an acquired taste. How am I going to feel about this? I'll let it settle in for a bit. But yeah. As you said, on the day of release, I scooted off home early to cook up a storm so I could be ready and waiting on that install button the moment it was released. I think I clicked it about 11 minutes after it said it was available. So I was very,
Excellent.
very quick. So I went around all of my devices and told them all to update exactly at the same time. So I dove straight in on all my devices, right, full on.
That is pretty impressive. That is pretty impressive. I do have a quick question though. When you said you were waiting for the release, is the UK generally behind or ahead of where things are released here? I mean, you are 6 hours ahead of me right at this moment. So do you get
Indeed,
releases
yes.
before we do, or do you get them at the same time?
Well, it's at the same time, so it's the same hourly offset that it's the 6 hours
Okay,
difference that we have. So when it was released at like noon your end, um, that translated to 6 p.m. for me. So
got
that's
it.
why I was able to come home from work, make something nice to eat just before the release time, which was 6 p.m. And I was sitting there ready and waiting. I turned on all my devices, and they were all sitting there ready and waiting for 6 p.m. to arrive. And there you go. As soon as that happened, I was like, click the install button, and it all started. All started. But yeah, when you do that at that time, obviously lots of people around the world are doing the same thing. So it's not
Yeah.
the fastest, smooth experience it would be if you did have some patience, unlike me, and actually waited a day or two. Then things would have been a little bit smoother. But yeah, it wasn't too bad. It took a couple of good hours to do everything, and then I sent you the screenshot with everything running, and
Yeah.
here's my iPhone, and here's my Mac, and I'm running Tahoe, and here's what it looks like, and there you go. And I was wondering what you thought of the look and feel of Tahoe, which is why I sent you the screenshot. So and then I got an interesting reply.
Which we'll get to in a moment. I didn't want to judge based on screenshots, quite frankly. I wanted to actually install it myself, and I did not want to install it on my production Macs, at least not to start. So
Oh
I
yeah, yeah.
I opted to upgrade the Mac Mini that I use for the video recording at Macstock. And so that has been my test bed for running Tahoe so far. Um, and I do have some initial reactions to it, but I really want to focus more on your experience because you've been actively using it as your primary operating system. In my case,
Yeah.
it's been secondary. It's when I go over to that Mac and I play with it or I sit down and noodle around with it or whatnot. But you've actually been using it as your primary. So um,
Oh
the
yeah,
the
yeah.
phone that you upgraded was your iPhone 12 Pro, right? Um,
That's right.
and I know since then you've purchased a new iPhone. You've got the iPhone 17 Pro, I believe.
Indeed.
Um, but how was that experience, or how good is the new integration between iPhone and macOS and indeed iPad OS, which, as you explained in a previous episode, the iPad is now, one of your primary computing devices. So what has that been like?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the upgrades I did to my iPhone 12 Pro and my iPad first, um, and I did the Mac afterwards. Um, as you say, because the iPad is my primary uh, device, but also my Mac is my main system as well. So my actual production machine. So I went ahead and upgraded that on day zero as well. So
Mm.
yes, some would say living dangerously, but I was really intrigued by a lot of the under the bonnet features and extra functions and functionality. There's a lot more than just the look and feel. So I was
Absolutely.
really interested in all the other things that Tahoe was going to give us as well. So that sort of trumped everything else. So if there was a look and feel issue or difficulty in getting used to the new look and feel, then that would be lesser than all the new functions and features that I was really interested in. So yeah, and it turns out uh, we've had a fairly similar look and feel to macOS for 10 years or so. So now there's quite a big departure, and it is a bit of an acquired taste, shall we say. Some people uh, uh, like the way it's always been, and some others are happy to embrace the new and go with the glassiness and liquidiness of the new look and feel.
Well, and okay, I'll talk about this briefly, and then we'll get back to your experiences here, because it's not so much liquid glass that bothers me, quite frankly. It's the disconnect between what the Mac represents in my daily life versus what an iPhone or an iPad represents.
Right.
And many of many of the design elements that have made their way into Tahoe seem to be there only because they exist on iPad OS or iOS, not
Yes.
because they make sense on the Mac. And I think that's probably what bothers me the most about some of the changes that Apple has made, and I will dig into those a little bit, a little bit. I don't want to get too far into it,
Yeah.
but I'll dig
Yeah.
into that a
Yeah.
little bit. And as a little preview, I'm also going to explain how I fixed
Fixed it.
most of those
Quite.
issues,
Quite. Quite.
but then also the issues with some of those fixes. So, yeah, let's get back to that. Some of the new apps that Apple has introduced, or some of the updates to existing apps that Apple has introduced, how have those been so far? For example, much has been made about kind of an overhaul to messages on the Mac. There's the new phone app. There are things that
Yes. Yes.
enhance the integration between Apple's devices. How have those been?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, that's a good thing to highlight, actually. The new phone app is something that's immediately obvious when you do upgrade all of your systems. Of course, you're used to your phone having a phone app, or else it wouldn't be a
Right.
phone. But you're not used to having the same functionality, and I mean exactly the same functionality presented really nicely on other devices like your iPad and your Mac. So when your phone is close to your Mac, you don't need to change the context of what you're working on. You're still working on the Mac, but you can still have full access to your phone's capabilities for actually making phone calls and doing all sorts of things. So it's really nice, and the way they've integrated those systems across the platforms is really nice as well. So yeah, the phone is one of those immediately obvious things that you do notice when you upgrade. And the other thing that was big was the multitasking features of the iPad. That's had such a major overhaul that you do have to start to rethink a little bit about because there's no new ways of doing things. And it's those new ways that, because those ways didn't previously exist,
Hmm.
you would naturally have created your own workflows in your mind about how to do multitasking on an iPad. And now when these new features exist, some of those go out the window because you think, oh, there may be better ways to do what I had done in the past, and it sort of it messes with your workflow a bit. And that's one of the other things that I think people have struggled with a little bit, because they've had such this such defined workflow that now the workflow possibilities, you don't have to use them, but the possibilities that are there have potentially changed what your workflows can be. And I think that can be a little bit jarring to people that have had a defined workflow in mind for so many years. So I think it's a good thing. But I can see why some people think it's a bit jarring, because they've gotten so used to a workflow that they now have to start to possibly rethink a workflow.
And you said something very important just a moment ago. You don't have to use them. That's
Yeah.
a very nice benefit that Apple has built into the new operating system, iPad OS 26, I should say, in that, yes, you can use these Mac like multitasking, multi windowing features if you want to. And oh, yeah, by the way, we finally gave you a real mouse cursor too. But the nice thing is you can turn them off. You can work like you are used to working. So if it is too jarring, you have the ability to switch back. And I think that kind of consideration from Apple is a very important one. And it
Yeah,
does
yeah.
dovetail into the changes to the Mac in the sense that we don't have the ability to switch back to a previous way of working. But I also wanted to touch on the phone app as well, because you mentioned something very important there too, in that it does depend upon your phone being near your Mac. In other words, the phone app is not like, say, Google Voice. The Google Voice, you can have the Google Voice app installed on your phone and you can make calls from your phone, but you don't need the phone to make calls. You can make and receive calls on your
Yeah,
Mac if you
yeah,
want to. And the phone app
yeah.
is less like that, in that it requires the phone to be nearby. If the phone isn't there, you can't make and receive calls on it.
That's right. Yeah, if you have your phone switched off and you have that in the bottom of a trunk somewhere, you're not going to get very far if you try to access it from your Mac.
But I agree. There has been a huge issue with taking phone calls on a Mac. It's nice. It's been nice that when a phone call comes in on your phone, you see the little FaceTime notification pop up, which by itself is confusing. Why is FaceTime popping up? They're not
Yeah,
calling
yeah.
me with FaceTime, they're calling me on the phone, right? So there's always been this little weird disconnect. And then if you want to make a call, how do you do that? You, you know, so you use FaceTime. So to have the phone app and separate out the video calling features from the audio calling
Yeah.
features, I think will help solidify the use of each of those apps in people's minds, and it'll be more clear as we move forward.
That's it. Yeah, it makes a lot more sense now that they're separated out. It's like
Yeah,
in the early days of iTunes that used to bundle together so many functions and features, and those have been separated out into their separate apps. And I think that was for a benefit. Think that things are better now in that way. So for instance, Apple Music app now was a subset of functionality of iTunes in the past. And the same with videos. Apple Videos used to be a subset as well, but no, they're separate apps. They're better defined, and it's the same with the
mostly,
phone app, I think. Well, I think they're better
mostly.
defined. Yeah, they're
I, I
arguably better
I would
defined.
argue that the podcast app is a
Oh
downgrade
yes,
from,
I'd never liked the podcast app. I
yeah,
must
what
admit that's.
podcasting or podcast subscriptions under iTunes were much more straightforward and made more sense.
This
The
is true.
the way
Yeah.
the podcast app works just doesn't work for me, so I found an alternative. But yeah, for the
Yeah,
most
like
part,
you
I think
say,
it
having
makes
a
sense.
separate phone app and having FaceTime specifically as a video calling system being separate,
Makes more sense.
but they makes more sense, yeah, to
Yeah,
most people. I mean, who would have thought that to make an audio call from your Mac, you had to launch the video caller and make an audio only FaceTime call
right.
uh, to achieve what you wanted to. It made sense to us because we knew our way around the apps and the systems and so on. But to the average person, they would be pretty much mystified about how do I make a call from the Mac again? And
Yeah,
now it's all become quite straightforward, and it's nice that it's just there in the OS and it makes sense now.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now they have made changes to the phone app on the iPhone as well, to
Mm.
a lot of controversy. Uh, and
Yes, that's
well,
controversial as well. Yeah.
yeah, I've not experienced it myself, not yet anyway. But what do you think about the new phone app layout on iOS? Have you reverted back to, because it is, again, it's possible to revert back to the old way. Have you reverted back to the old way, or are you using this new interface that Apple has decided we would like?
Well, yeah, you're quite right. Again, it's a choice. You can choose to go back to the old user interface on the phone app, so that the buttons, so that you know your muscle memory of where those buttons are. You're not going to be confused by not only a new look and feel, but also a new location
Right.
of where all your functions are. So I did go through all of the um, uh, the buttons on the new locations and where things are in the menus, and it does make sense where they've put things together in a new menu, and I liked I'm a bit of a minimalist. I like the new design being more minimal, and also hiding away some of those other functions that you can get to through a menu instead.
Right.
That's perfectly good. So I've embraced the new style, and I'm sticking with that for the moment. And I've not had any problems yet with using the new way of doing things in the phone app. So yeah, I'm all in.
It's somewhat like when Apple revamped the Photos app on the phone, and I'm still not super happy with the way it works, but at least they've given us ways to tweak it and make it feel a little more familiar. Um, I do find it a little confusing that you have to scroll down to get the buttons that you want to see, or the targets that you want to tap on, but you can make it work, right? So I imagine for a lot of folks, if they're not aware that they can switch back to the old style of interface on the phone app, they'll make it work. And Apple will continue to tweak it as time goes on too, as we get to 26.1 for iOS as well as for
Absolutely.
iPadOS. Some of these things that are a little bumpy out of the gate are going to smoothen out. And
Shall we say?
I mentioned that a little bit later too. But what else? How about the Messages app on the Mac? It's always been lacking a bit on the Mac side of things in
On the
terms of
Mac
how we
side, yeah.
interact with messages, the ability to, for example, the stickers, third-party stickers that we can load in, they never seem to show up on the Mac. And when they did show up, it was only some of them. And you're like, well, why isn't this one showing up, but this one is
Yeah.
showing up? And is that smoothened out a little bit now, or?
Yes, that's better as well. Yeah. It was, I mean, to be fair, it always was confusing the way Apple had those hidden behind specialist apps. So for instance, not only an app that you're using, but that app had its own app store with its own
Right.
little components in it that you could add in, so you could do your sticker pack additions, and it was all very, very confusing. Nobody knew where to go or what to click on. So yeah, things are a lot better now, a lot more streamlined. Um, uh, to be honest, it's a bit of a US thing. I think you guys use messages a lot more than we do in the UK. We tend to gravitate towards, because we've got such a wide selection of people with different devices all over the place. We tend to use
You do.
WhatsApp more. So, for instance, and that is a good thing you can do with iOS, is you can choose what your default message client is going to be, and you can actually replace Apple's messaging client with WhatsApp, even for phone calls. So that's another thing that's interesting about the phone app. I know you guys use traditional phone carriers more, and sometimes even for phone calls, we'll just use any old carrier, any old data pipe, and use WhatsApp over the top of that. So often we'll have WhatsApp installed on our Mac, and we make a phone call from there. And although it's true that still relies on your phone sitting next to you to do the things. So it's not entirely like Google Voice is, but yeah, we tend to not rely on the messages side of things as much as you guys do in the States, I think.
I just, look, I don't use it for anything other than sending texts. So to me, a text is a text. I don't care if I'm using messages or WhatsApp or whatever. If I'm sending a text to an Android phone or to an iPhone, it doesn't really matter to me. It's just a text I'm sending. So
Yeah.
personally, I never really understood why someone might not use the Messages app. I know that there are some advantages, and that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, I mean, I'm sending a text to an Android user or to a BlackBerry user or to an
Blackberries,
iPhone user.
yay.
It doesn't matter. They're going to receive it just the same. But yeah, I
Yeah,
guess I
well,
guess
now Apple
WhatsApp
has
probably has
adopted our.
more. WhatsApp probably has more features for sending higher resolution photos and videos and things like
That's
that
it. Yeah, rich messaging, that sort of thing,
that you
especially
might,
photos, is easier. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you might otherwise be limited if you're sticking with the Messages app.
But of course, now that Apple has adopted RCS,
Hmm.
it does make interspecies communications better.
Just surface playing with contacts and calendars and photos even on the Mac, I've not noticed any major differences between Sequoia and Tahoe as far as the usability of those apps or how they worked. Um, wh- what might I be missing? Have you noticed anything different in the core communication apps that maybe, that feature wasn't there in Sequoia?
Yeah, yeah. I must have been lucky, because for the core apps you mentioned, like contacts, calendars, and email, I've noticed in Tahoe that just the interactions of moving messages around, adding things to the calendar from messages or email, and the integration is actually faster. Well, it feels faster on Tahoe for me.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, that's it. It's funny because I do see entirely the opposite being mentioned on Reddit, for instance, of people bemoaning the laggardness of Tahoe, and I'm thinking, what are they doing that I'm not doing? Um, although I must admit, I do tend to keep my Mac is quite in a stock form. I don't run too many other third-party things, doing things in the background. It's quite stock, my Mac setup. So perhaps that's one of the reasons why I'm having a really smooth experience, and some other people don't. Especially if you update an OS and you've got something installed that sits in the background that does a fairly close to the metal background task. Um, if those developers haven't updated the app in a nice timely manner before the actual live release comes out, then you will notice some performance issues
Yeah.
potentially, because and just the fact that I'm not using those third-party low level things running in the background, that I don't notice any of that at all. It doesn't affect me
This
because I run a
certainly,
clean system. Yeah.
well, and this certainly comes up a little bit in the comments I have about my experience with Tahoe in just a bit, but I did experience some lagginess in the interface, the overall interface of Tahoe. And this is, as I mentioned in the emails we were trading back and forth, this is on an M4 Pro Mac Mini, with what do I have? I think I have 48 gig of memory in it. Uh, and,
Wow.
a decent size storage drive. So it's not like it's a minimal Mac or anything. It's not like it's an
Oh no,
M1
it's not a
iMac, for
performance
goodness
thing at all.
sakes.
No, no, no.
So it should be able to handle that. But I did notice a little lagginess as I moved windows around on screen without anything else running. Just my first experiences with a new version of macOS are always playing around in the Finder. I spend so much time in the Finder. I spend so much time interacting with it that I tend to play with that first, and that's where I notice things. I also, as other nerds like me do, and I'm sure you do this too, open up system settings and start playing around in there and see what kind of changes have been made in that area too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
most of the lagginess I noticed was in regards to things like resizing windows or moving a window around on screen. It might be a little stuttery. Now, to be fair, one of the reasons I wasn't necessarily going to dwell on this, other than briefly mention it, and I'll consider what I just did now that brief mention. So that's all I'm going to talk about at the rest of the episode. The reason I wasn't necessarily going to dwell on it is because when you first upgrade an operating system, whether it's on iPhone, an iPad, or a
Yeah,
Mac, there's a
yeah,
lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes as, for want of a better way to say it,
yeah.
as the operating system is settling.
As it
As it,
beds in, exactly. Yeah,
yeah. And that's especially true on the iPhone. I've always noticed it more on the iPhone. We'll always notice more excessive battery drain on an iPhone after an operating system
absolutely.
upgrade
Yeah,
because a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes, not the least of which are app updates. And
yes,
while we have more control over app updates on the Mac, on the iPhone, they tend to kind of happen behind the scenes. So as you upgrade your operating system, the App Store is saying, oh, hey, guess what? There's a new version of this app for this operating system that was just released. And oh, yeah, by the way, the week after an operating system is released, all the developers start rolling out their updates. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that wouldn't
yeah.
normally occur. So it's normal for battery life to be a little sus when you first upgraded your operating system. Um, but that said, uh, I'm not ready to say that the interface is laggy in Tahoe. And I think the experience of syncing data between contacts and calendars and mail is a little different than just the overall feel of an interface. So I'm not ready to say that yet because I still think there's probably some of that settling going on the Mac Mini. And again, I don't use it daily. But then some of the changes that I'm going to note in just a little bit seem to take care of it. And I think part of that too is because in my experimentation with liquid glass and Tahoe and how to tweak things a bit, I've I've discovered that really what liquid glass is, it seems to be an overlay on top of what we're used to using. That's what it seems to be. It's something that a
Yeah,
developer can turn on or turn off on a per app basis. And
yeah.
that means that both interfaces are there. So ultimately
For some
isn't
things, yeah,
isn't
yeah.
liquid glass, an overlay on top of the quote traditional interface. Perhaps, perhaps not, but that's kind of the impression I get, and I thought perhaps that's why I may have been experiencing some of that lagginess as well.
I think for some elements that's true. Like for instance, for instance, the panel in Finder, that sort of thing, because um, the other the other non-glassy panel is behind the scenes there, still
Mm-hmm.
available. Um, but for instance, it's only for some elements. So for instance, the dock itself has been entirely replaced. So there is no
Yes, it has.
the overlay side of things doesn't occur
Right.
there, but it does in some other things. And there are other potential reasons of why there are some lagginess as well. I've heard of reports of some um, apps. It's a bit random. Some of them are reported as being Apple's own apps, one or two of them, and some are third party, but some of them are having a bit of an issue with memory issues,
Mm,
potentially memory leaks. And when you start getting a memory leak on a system, that's when your performance goes down.
sure, absolutely.
And also, a surprising number of people. I mean, I'm probably odd. I turn my computer off when I'm not using it. Some people thinks that is an odd
That's
thing to
that's
do.
very odd, Darren.
The thing is, that's it. I mean, it's not odd to me. It's entirely normal. But sometimes you see someone saying that their machine's running a bit laggy, and it's been on for 17 days doing 900 billion things, and you think, well, if you just turn it off and on again, and it has a chance to boot into a clean memory map. and everything is clean and nice when you reboot your machine, you suddenly find, oh, it's working nicely again now.
Sure.
So perhaps
Yeah.
people just need to remember to occasionally turn their computer off when they're not using it. I know it's madness, but
Well, I mean, it's a rule of thumb when you're a Windows user. What's the number one troubleshooting step when someone calls with a Windows problem? Have you rebooted the computer?
have you turned it off and on
That's
again? Indeed.
all. Yeah. Have you turned it off and on again? That is always a great first step. Mac, Windows,
Yeah,
Linux, whatever.
yeah.
When something starts going wonky, restart the computer. Um, and I think the habit of leaving the computer on versus shutting it down when you're done with it. Now, do you sleep it or do you shut it down?
Oh, I go the whole hog. It's
Okay,
just shut it down. So every time I turn my computer on, it's from a cold boot.
right. Now, I would argue that when you do that, these days it doesn't matter quite so much in terms of getting the computer up and running. I mean, we're talking about 30-second boot times these days, right? If
Oh,
that. Uh,
mine's 10 seconds, if that. Well, 5 seconds. Yeah,
right.
5, 10 seconds.
So, okay, 30 seconds on the outside of things. From the point that you get to the login screen, log in, get your desktop, and all your apps are running.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
When I get my desktop, yeah, it takes me 10 seconds to get to my desktop.
So I would argue that it might take you a little bit more time to get to the ready to work stage because that stuff is loading in the background. All the apps in your menu bar, whatever other apps you had running at the time you
Ah,
shut down, they need to fire back up again. However,
they do.
you
They do.
also, as you mentioned a moment ago, you're a bit of a minimalist and you don't have as many apps running as I might have. I mean,
Exactly.
how many do I have here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I
Oh,
have 14 apps in my menu bar right now that I can see. And that's not even the ones that are hidden by the menu of
wow.
Ecamm Live. So for me, all those apps need to start back up again. Sometimes they require signing in again. Sometimes they blah blah
Yeah.
blah. All this stuff goes on. So I will either sleep my Mac or leave it running. My Mac Studio stays running all the time. I barely ever shut it down. I think that habit came from the days of hard drives. When you had to wait
Oh,
for
yes.
your
Yeah.
Mac to boot and it took
Spinning drives.
minutes upon minutes to get that thing up and running, I think that's where that came from.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
then there was the
I
side
also
benefit.
blame I
The
also blame the Linux guys as well because they used to have competitions where they used to say, "Oh, my machine's been up for 522 days. Beat that."
uptime. Yeah. Yeah, I should run the uptime command on my Mac Studio and see how long it's been up and running. Although I think in this case it hasn't been that long. I believe I rebooted it sometime in the last few weeks, but most of the time that stays on. Now, this computer, my live streaming computer, the one that depends upon running as efficiently as possible, it's very common for me to sleep it, when I'm not doing anything like live streaming. But just before we do a live stream, I'll always reboot it. Always. And that's to kind of clean up that, as you mentioned, all that cruft that's in memory, things that might be
Yeah.
stuck or crashed or, that we don't even realize about until we open System Monitor and say, how long has that app been not responding in the background? It's like we don't know. But yeah, I think these days it really doesn't matter one way or the other. You're not going to hurt a computer shutting it down or rebooting every day, and you're not going to harm a computer leaving it on. It's just a matter of
No,
personal preference.
that's right. And luckily, the Mac is one of the best computers about sipping hardly any energy. So if you did choose to
That's it.
leave it on for a while,
Yeah.
at least you're not uh, needing a power station right next to you to keep it going.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Um, what else? What else have you discovered or found, or what else do you love about the new experience with all the 26 edition of operating systems?
Oh, the first visual thing, because like yourself, when the first thing I did was actually to jump into Finder when I upgraded my Mac to macOS 26, and there you see the floating panels, the concept of floating panels, making a big splash into the liquid glass,
I see
and
what you did there.
that. See what I did there? Nice one, nice one. Yeah, so these floating panels. Initially, I thought, oh, this is kind of weird because not only have you got an edge around the window, but you've now got an edge around the panel that floats inside the window. So you've got like a double edge. And when I
Yeah.
first saw that, I thought, am I going to be able to, can I cope with this visual change and not find it horrific? But I sort of tried to embrace it. And over the next few days, I was kind of quite liking this. So, my Mac has a nice blue theme overall. So the inner circle of the outline for the panel is a nice shade of blue. I didn't realize that that was dynamic. So when I first looked at it was just a solid color. I thought that, that's just the color, based on my choices of my desktop and icon scheme and so on. But I found out afterwards that it isn't. And I thought, oh, this is one of the things that Apple tries to do is to surprise you with little delightful things. This thing that happened, I found particularly delightful. I was on a meeting call with a company who a video call, funny enough, and they have a red background to their logo, so the whole of their screen was red. When I moved my Finder window that was blue over this window to look for some files to share with them, the highlighted color around the edge of the floating window took on a rather pleasing shade of red to complement the red color that was behind it. And I found that particularly nice because design-wise and color-wise, so the color choices, because it didn't just pick up the same color red and just plonk it there on the side of the outline of the panel. It chose a complementary color that would complement that background color nicely, because the Finder window is over the top of this red background border. And I think that was wonderful when I thought, oh, this color scheme of these floating windows is actually dynamic, and it's sort of like a nice complementary color appears and sort of like shimmers into place and sort of like looks a little bit liquidy as well. So it's just it all. I thought that was delightful. So it's like, okay, I'm embracing liquid glass. This is really nice. I like the look of this.
It, I feel as if it's an extension of what we had before. We always had that wallpaper tinting option in the system settings under appearance.
That's it.
There
Yeah,
was a allow wallpaper tinting in Windows, and
that's it.
I suspect this is like an extension of that. In other words,
Yes, it's an extension of that, exactly.
now that they've adopted this glassy like appearance to many of the elements on screen, not all the elements, but many of the elements on screen, now that they've adopted this, the tinting that you might pick up from the wallpaper behind may in some cases be more pronounced, as it was in the case of this logo that you experienced last week. Now, when you're talking about the panel, when you're talking about that panel, I think we see that differently. You see it as part of the liquid glass look and feel, and I see
Yes.
the padding. I see that
Oh,
horribly thick border between the edge of a Finder window and that panel. And we're talking about the sidebar, right? And so in the sidebar of a Finder window, there is
exactly.
now a separate element that somebody at Apple decided would be a good idea to put there to float behind the. I'm starting to let my little snarkiness sneak in here, Darren.
Oh,
To let the perhaps to highlight or enhance the list of items on the sidebar of a Finder window, or any window, mind you.
Oh, well said.
But in particular in a Finder window, because that's what we're talking about at first here, the Finder.
At
And
first,
so
yeah.
that little background behind the items in the sidebar is what you're talking about when you're talking about tinted blue, or that picks up the red tint from the wallpaper and things like that.
That's it. Yeah.
And in your case, it's glassy. And in my case, it wasn't glassy, and I'll explain why in a moment. But what other surprise and delights might you have found? I know that that's kind of fun. That's a fun one. Do you use the transparent icons, or do you stick to the colored icons?
Yes. I did have a bit of a dilemma because now you have four choices. So you can
Yeah,
have
yeah,
transparent icons. You can also have dark and light versions of each of those.
right.
And you can also have tinted versions of the light and dark icons. So
Yeah.
you've got like several options for your icon. That's also another thing that the Mac has to do when it's installed is depending on your icon choice. And there's a whole new icon rendering scheme, and uh, so the edges of icons can shimmer in the light if you have things in the right location as you move them around. So those extra icon parts to the icons mean that all the icons have to be updated. So if you've just updated your Mac and you dive straight in and you go straight into the Finder and you view a screen of 1,000 icons, it's got to redraw them all. It's got to redo them all. So there's a lot of background stuff it has to do
Yeah.
to redo the whole icon structure of how it's going to display things. And you can see that when you go into settings and choose a different, a radically different icon layout, you can see them all being redrawn whilst you make a change. That's quite quick after a couple of days of you having the system up, but initially it may be slower because there's a lot of changes it has to do to what you've got in there.
And it seems, I'm sorry to interrupt there, but it seems
Oh,
as
carry on.
if this is Tahoe creating the new icons, not the
Yeah.
developer needing to create the icons.
Yes and no. Um, most developers, I mean, macOS comes out for around well, several months before it's actually released to the public. So the developers have a developer version that they can test their apps with, and they often have already updated their apps with the new icons. You just don't see them because they're not being rendered. So when the final release appears, magically most of the icons are in this new scheme, although there are a few that don't, and they stand out because the developers that haven't updated their apps, you often will see now that their icons have a grey background because they haven't updated their app to include the new icon layout. There's a whole new developer app to create new icons under this new liquid glass regime, as it were. And it is due to the developers themselves. They do have to make new icons and upload them with the next update to their app before they're properly handled. But of course, actually, I was going to say all of the Apple apps have updated, but
Not all of them.
that's not entirely true because I'm looking at
GarageBand
one
hasn't.
now which hasn't. Exactly, there are a few that haven't. So
Yeah.
yes, even Apple hasn't updated all of its icons yet. So it's fairly early days for it, but it's a new icon renderer. It's difficult because we've gotten used to, for instance, the Happy Mac icon for Finder. That's a classic. It's been a classic design for 30 odd years now, so it's very difficult to go away from that. And Apple did try with their first release to go away from it, especially with the dark icon version. And you look at it and think, oh, that's not right. That's just wrong. The white is on the wrong side of and the blue is on the other side. It's just like it's back to front.
Yeah.
So they quickly fixed that. But so I've chosen a combination, so you can combine all of these things. So I like dark mode, but I don't choose the dark mode icon. So you can have a light mode icon set with a dark mode desktop. So I've got the combination of those two things, and it's quite nice that you can mix and match those combinations to get exactly what you want as a look.
I have a theory on the Finder icon, and that is that Apple, this is only a theory, just a theory. I have no factual basis to say this on. I have a feeling that Apple is consolidating their development teams at Apple, and that someone who has no history with or no understanding of the Mac's history was assigned to create new icons for Tahoe and just thought, hey, wouldn't it be cute if I reversed the blues on the Finder icon? I think that looks wonderful. But
Yeah.
without understanding that one side of the icon represents the user and the other side of the icon represents the Mac or the Macintosh, I should say.
Indeed.
And when you reverse them, it doesn't make sense anymore. And I think or feel that perhaps in many of the cases, many of the problems that I have with Tahoe's look and feel are the result of someone working on Tahoe who doesn't have experience working with macOS or even indeed OS 10. But that's just a thought I had as I played around with it, that it feels as if someone is trying to force their idea of how the operating system should look based on what they've developed for a different platform, versus trying to
Yeah.
create it in a way that it feels fresh and it feels new, but it also feels like a Mac.
Yeah.
And
It's difficult from a design point of view
yeah,
because in the past, we've always been used to only one icon set. You
yeah,
get the operating system and you only have one set of icons. You take it or leave it. Although you can replace individually the icons that are displayed for each icon set. So you can replace bits and pieces. But generally, there's only one choice, or we've had only one choice in the past. But now we've got 5 or 6 choices.
yeah,
So to make a design that works across each one of those combinations is pretty tricky. I think they've nailed it on the light side icons, but the dark side icons might need a little bit of extra work, perhaps. So yeah, like you say, designers, it's difficult to design uh, the new sets of icons whereby they're rendered and they work uh, in a nice, pleasing look for the 6 different methods that you can use to display them now, whereas previously we only had one. So it was easier back in the day.
yeah. Okay, we're about an hour into the show.
Wow.
Lots of great things for people to experience in Tahoe and iOS 26 and iPad OS 26. Any final thoughts before we move on to some of my thoughts on this?
Ah, fabulous. Okay, yeah, I've only got one final thought on
Okay,
Tahoe,
awesome.
especially on the look and feel side. Just one final thing. I think one of the reasons why I particularly like the look of what's going on in the new UI is because of what I'm looking at. So I'm looking at this rendered on an iMac, which has a built-in monitor, which is 4.5K. So my pet theory is that a lot of people that are having issues with the look and feel, especially on Reddit when they show screenshots, is that they're showing screenshots from a much lower resolution on a different size monitor, and in that case, you do notice some of these gaps and padding a lot more than you would if you were looking at what I see in the real world when I'm looking at my 4.5K iMac monitor. And of course, the Apple OS has been designed to run on the Apple computer, and it's also combined with an Apple display. So with that combination, everything it seems perfect. But when you start to stray out of that combination a little bit, I think my pet theory is that once you start introducing third-party monitors and other display managers and so on, that things start to possibly fall apart a little bit.
Maybe, but that's part of the consideration that has to be given to the design when they're
Absolutely.
rolling it out. And it also doesn't explain why I feel the screenshots you shared with me are just as ugly as what I see on my screen. But that's
Oh dear.
all right. So, as I mentioned, I do spend a great deal of time in Finder. So naturally, that's one of the first things I am going to notice after an upgrade. And my take on it is that the Finder design is, how do I say this? It's clunky. It's clunky. It lacks the elegance that previous editions of the Finder had. Now, I'm not going to argue that the Finder wasn't in need of some fine tuning. There certainly are places where it could do with an upgrade. And I think that there are components of what Apple brought to Tahoe that would make it feel fresh without necessarily falling victim to some of the things that I noticed as I was playing with it. Some of those things include excessive padding around the windows, the ugly new mouse cursors. Honestly, they're far larger than they need to be.
A bit chunky.
They're chunky. The overly rounded corners. Last I checked, my Mac has square corners. Sorry, my iPhone has round corners. My Mac has square corners. So why do I need such excessively rounded corners? And to be fair, the corners on my iPhone are just as rounded as the corners and the windows in Tahoe.
There you go. Yeah. And also the corners of my iMac are precisely rounded in exactly the same radius as the Finder window that sits next to it. So yeah, although the edge of the monitor is square,
That's what I'm talking
the
about.
corners of the corners of the iMac itself is rounded, so actually it looks nice.
But the corners of the
But
screen
only
are square.
on my setup.
The corners of your screen are square, though. The
Yeah.
physical the display itself has rounded corners, but the screen within that physical unit are square corners.
Yeah, it works for me. I like it.
Well, good for you. Anyway, and I'm I'm teasing, of course. And the Finders,
Absolutely.
here's the other thing, the Finders toolbar icons with those hideous oval backgrounds. Oh my gosh, I
Oh,
cannot
okay.
get past
Okay.
those hideous oval backgrounds. They are awful. And the worst part about them is that they didn't give any consideration to the size of the icon within the oval. So some of the icons are almost literally touching the edge of the oval, which is just a huge
Let me have a look
no-no.
at that.
So to
Oh, it looks
me,
better in dark mode.
only barely, but it does look better, and I touch on that in just a second. I find this overall design really hard on the eyes, and at best, I find it distracting. It draws my eyes away from what I should be focused on, and they focus on these elements that just don't look right to me. On top of that, there's so much wasted space. It's almost like Apple forgot that the Mac isn't restricted to a tiny 10-inch or smaller screen. It's like they took the lazy way out and said, we've added this elements to iPad OS, and that requires larger elements, so we have a place to touch on screen. Certainly Mac users would like it if we made everything on the screen tappable too, right? That's my impersonation of the developer who decided to make these changes. But honestly, and I mentioned this to you in an email, Darren, what they've done, in my opinion, is just horribly poor UI design, at least for Apple. Maybe for the local high school kids that are in an entry-level design course and they're trying to mimic Apple's design language, it's fine. But it's not what I expect from Cupertino. So Well, actually, the teacher would probably tell the kids to go back and do it over again, but
Oh
that's
dear.
another conversation. So that's that. That's the Finder. I just can't get past all that extra padding, and I can't get past the round corner. Well, I could probably get past the round corners, but I can't get past those hideous ovals. And the thing about the ovals around the toolbar icons is that in a non-liquid glass Mac, and in fact, on Tahoe, this option exists, but it doesn't do anything. On a non-liquid glass Mac, under accessibility, you can actually go in and you can turn on button backgrounds or turn off button backgrounds. But in Tahoe, when you try to tweak that setting under accessibility, it does nothing. It does not turn on or off those oval backgrounds behind the
Yeah.
toolbar buttons. So that may or may not be a bug. And maybe it's something that will be fixed
No, I think it's intentional.
in 26.1, but it does feel intentional. And the ovals and indeed the background, aka the padding and the sidebar of the Finder window, is necessary in order to give the false glass effect that Apple is trying to give with liquid glass. It's necessary to do that. It's necessary to leave them on. But when you use the Mac as I use it, it becomes a distraction. But we'll talk about that in just a second. All right. So moving on, I also want to talk for a second about the menu bar. What is the point of making the menu bar transparent when I can't use that space? Right? They made it completely transparent, no background to the menu bar at all. So the impression
Yeah, it
is
looks lovely.
that I can drag a window there. I should be
Oh,
able to
actually, I
drag
haven't
a
tried.
window to that empty space. But instead, what happens is the window hits an invisible wall. It does not
Of
go
course.
up past that menu bar. So when you click the green button and you tell an app to fill the screen, what you end up with is this thin strip of wallpaper at the top of your screen that makes no sense from a design perspective. It's ugly. And depending on
But there's a
your
reason for that, though.
depending on your wallpaper, it may completely distract you from what you're trying to focus on, which is this app that you made fill the screen. So the nice thing about the gray menu bar or even the tinted menu bar that Apple has had in Sequoia or before is that there's a visual reference to tell you that something is there. And I will say, to Apple's credit, they give you the ability to turn that back on again. And that's probably one of the first tweaks that anybody should make if they don't want to be distracted by their wallpaper behind an app that's set to fill the screen. Okay. But if you're going to make it transparent, at least let me drag something there. At least let me put
But
something in that empty space.
there's a reason
But
you can't, though, because when you drag something, a window off the top of the screen, that invokes mission control for you to place it on a space.
only if you
So
turn that on.
mission control is turned on by default.
What if you have it turned off?
If you have
No,
it
no.
turned off, then I suppose you could put a
I'm
window up
giving
there.
you guff. I'm giving you guff, Darren. But I no. Dragging a window to the top of my screen does not invoke mission control.
It does for me.
Great, and that's how you have your Mac set up to work. But simply dragging a window up into that unused or visibly unused space of my screen, there's no point in making it transparent if I can't use that space. What is the point of it being transparent if I can't put something there? So
Because your
that
background's in there, it looks nice.
it does not look nice. It looks horrible. If I have a background that's a whole bunch of multicolored
Uh,
triangles, if that's my wallpaper, let's say my wallpaper is filled
yeah.
with triangles that are of hundreds of different colors, and that's my background wallpaper. And
Yeah.
now on Tahoe, the top edge of all those triangles is showing up behind what would be the menu bar at the top of my screen. And I take an app and I say, hey, Apple Pages, fill my screen. And now at the top of Apple Pages is this weird bar with hundreds of multicolored different triangles behind it. It's stupid. It makes no sense. What the heck, Apple?
Okay.
Anyway, um, right. So Tahoe has an ugly ass UI. All right, so there you go. That should be the title of the episode, Ugly Ass Tahoe. But I also said to you, all right, there's a lot of tongue in cheek going on here. I also said to you, Darren, that until or unless, and this is, I'm serious about this, until or unless I can make some UI tweaks to the Finder, which is my biggest sticking point, because as I said, I live in the Finder a good chunk of the day. Until or unless I can make tweaks to it, and the look of the Finder is really my only problem. I don't care about liquid glass. I don't care if Apple decides to make the control center semi-transparent or the dock semi-transparent. I don't care about any of that. None of that bothers me. The look and feel of the Finder bothers the heck out of me, clearly. So, unless or until I can make tweaks to that UI, or until I can improve the look of the Finder, I'm going to stick with Sequoia. Okay, cool. Well, more on that in just a moment. Now, as we said a moment ago, I will admit that in or thanks to the screenshots that you shared, in dark mode, many of the distracting issues that I encountered, like the poorly designed toolbar icons and the excessive padding around the windows, those are minimized. They're still there. I still see them. They still bug me, but they're minimized. And that has to do with dark mode and the shades of transparency
it's more subtle. Yeah.
that Apple has decided to use in dark mode versus light mode. So I'll admit that if you're a dark mode user, it probably will not affect you anywhere near as much as it affects me. In fact, even if you're a light mode user, it might not affect you anywhere near as it affects me. But I pay attention to the little things like that, and the little thing, the padding and the corner radius and the toolbar button backgrounds, I have trouble getting past that. So what do I like? What do I like about Tahoe? Well, there's a couple things I like about the changes that Apple has made to the Finder side of things. And one of those changes that I like is the ability to show the menu bar background. So with the transparent menu bar, great, I don't like it, but at least in system settings, I can go in and I can say show menu bar background. And that goes a long way to fixing that unusable space problem that I mentioned a moment ago, because now I no longer think that it's space I should be able to use. So great. I love that they turned on or created that feature to show the menu bar background. What I would like is Apple to also provide me the ability to adjust the color or the contrast of that menu bar. In other words, yeah, it's great that you can show the menu bar background, but let me decide what color the menu bar background should be.
That's it. It's chosen for you. So you don't make a horrible mistake like choosing bright purple as your background.
Right. And it's chosen for you based on the color of your wallpaper. And
scheme, yeah.
And that's been a sticking point for me for a while, because I don't like the white menus and white Apple logo and white menu bar icons, because my eyes have a hard time discerning them. The white icons on the semi-translucent menu bar is very difficult for me to see at a glance. I can, if I focus on them, if I make an effort to decide or to determine what's up there, it's not a problem. But those are an issue for me.
I wonder what it would look like. Oh, okay. Yeah, that made a light bulb go off then when you said that it's difficult to see. Have you tried having a translucent menu bar, but also then setting that setting? What's the setting called? Increased contrast.
Stay tuned. I have played with Tahoe's new. They have a new contrast slider in Tahoe's accessibility, and I have played with that a little bit, and it does help a bit, and we'll talk about that because I have a series of fixes that I've gone through to try to
nice
to tamp down
mitigate
some of the issues that I have with Tahoe, and then I have an ultimate fix. But other things I like the new alias indicator. It's so much easier to see now. If you remember, alias in the past had that little tiny black arrow in the corner.
Yeah, easy to miss, and now it's got a circle around it.
Very easy to miss, and now it's got a circle background to it, a little white circle with the arrow on top of it. That is such a tiny change, but a huge change in terms of usability. And admittedly, it's something Apple borrowed from Windows. Windows has always had a well-defined, easy-to-see shortcut. In Windows, they're called shortcuts. Shortcut indicator. And now, finally, in Tahoe, Apple's alias indicator is very easy to discern, and it's very easy to identify versus that little tiny, thin black arrow that used to be there. So I love that. I also, and this is such a tiny issue to most people, but to me it was a big issue. I love that I can finally dump that stupid music player in the control center. I don't use it. I don't want to use it, but it takes so much space. It's so huge. When I could finally remove it from iOS, I was thrilled. And now that I can finally remove it from Tahoe's control center, I'm just over the moon. It takes up so much space that could be used for other things. And so having that full control over control center is amazing. And that is a huge benefit to upgrading to Tahoe, is to be able to fine tune what is shown and what's not shown in the control center. So that I will give Apple lots and lots of kudos for. Now, I'm not just going to complain without offering ways to fix things. And yes, I do fully realize that many of you listening, in fact, I would maybe even wager that most of you will like Tahoe and all that it brings to your Mac. But for those who have upgraded, and based on my searching for solutions, there is no small number of you out there. But based on those who've upgraded and find yourself regretting it, maybe some of my fixes will help. So let's get to it. The first is the Macintosh HD icon.
Oh, yes.
Let's talk about bad design for a second here. This is literally bad design.
I'll give you that one. You
can argue whether the look and feel of the Finder is bad design or not bad design. I think it's bad design, but other people love it. Great. All right, fine. But the new Macintosh HD icon is just bad design. The drive is presented to us as drive icons have always been presented to us in the past. Not a flat top-down view, but a perspective view, or at least I shouldn't say always. But in recent years, they've always been presented as a perspective view from the front. Yet, the designer of this icon, I don't even know if I can say this with a straight face. The designer of this icon just slapped a flat Apple logo on top without considering that the Apple logo should also be presented with a bit of perspective. So it's just bad.
A horrible icon.
It's just a horrible icon. It's just really awful. Now, how do we fix this? All right. In my case, and long-time listeners will know this because I've talked about this on the show before. In my case, I have been replacing the Macintosh HD icon with an icon that represents the Mac I'm using for years. In fact, as I said, I've talked about it on the show. and people have adopted it. And in some cases, I've put a classic, 1985 Mac icon there. But what I've been doing more recently is I put the icon of that particular Mac. So on this one, I have a MacBook Pro, an M3 MacBook Pro icon in the appropriate color in place of the Macintosh HD icon. Well, you can still do that. So fixing this particular problem is actually old hat to me. And the first step is to find an appropriate icon. Now, I will admit, and I don't know why they've done this, or I mean, I can probably imagine why they've done this, but Apple has made it a little trickier to find Mac icons within macOS, at least with the most recent releases. In general, they used to be found in a folder that's in your Mac's system folder, under library, under core services, and then within a bundle called core types.bundle. And inside there, you would have a contents folder and then a resources folder. And inside the resources folder, you will still to this day find many icon files, but you won't necessarily find the icon file that you're looking for. But they're there. They're there if you
they're
go,
not easy to find.
Yeah, they're there. They're just not as easy to find because now they're often buried within other bundles within that folder. So what I'm going to do, rather than explaining where to find them, I'm just going to link to a handy article by Alex Chan that will help you find the icon files, or the ICNS, that's the extension .icns, the ICNS files that you're looking for. And if you don't want to dig around within your Mac system folder, which look, I understand why you might not want to do that, you can always do a search online for any old icon that you think best represents your Mac. Okay? But that's the first step. You gotta get the icon file that you want to use. Once you have that, the fix is actually pretty simple. You right-click the Macintosh HD icon, whether it's on your desktop. I like to keep it on my desktop. It's no longer there by default, but you find the Macintosh HD icon, you right-click on it, and you select Get Info. And then the fun part is, with the Get Info window, you'd simply drag your new icon to that little itty-bitty icon at the top left, the far top left of the Get Info window. And when you do, the icon for Macintosh HD will instantly update to the icon of your choice. That's it. That's all you have to do. Find an icon file, Get Info in Macintosh HD, and drag that icon file up to the top left, to that little itty-bitty tiny icon in the top left of the Get Info window, and that will replace it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Really easy to do. Apple squeezy. Easy peasy, apple squeezy. Now, we talked about this a moment ago when you talked about all the different app icons that now a developer needs to embed within their package, their application package. There's a lot in there, but some developers haven't updated the icons yet to Tahoe, and Apple also is now kind of requiring that developers adopt this new squircle shape. So no longer can we have fun icons that represent the apps. Apple says, no, now they all got to be squircles. Well, and a squircle is a square with rounded corners, by the way. So if you're not familiar with that term, that's what a squircle is. It's a square with rounded corners. Yeah. So if you don't like that Tahoe puts some of your app icons in icon jail because they don't conform to the new squircle look, here's how you fix that. And by the way, what I'm talking about is on Tahoe, you might see, let's say, GarageBand, because we know GarageBand hasn't updated their icon. You might open up your applications folder and see an itty-bitty tiny representation of the old non-squircle GarageBand icon enclosed within a gray squircle. Yeah. I'm saying squircle a lot. Perhaps that should be in the title of the show.
It looks bad.
Yeah. And that makes it very hard to discern what you're looking at because now the icon's
That's
been
it. Yeah,
shrunk
yeah,
down to a
yeah.
size roughly half of what it used to be. And I don't like that, especially on the dock. I don't like to see all these little itty bitty tiny icons on the dock. So here's how you fix it. Well, like changing the Macintosh HD icon, this is also easy peasy. In fact, I would say it's even easier peasier to fix the application icons so they're no longer in icon jail. Open up your applications folder and locate one of your jailed apps. Once you found it, right click it or control click it, right click it, and select Get Info, just like we did to Macintosh HD. And then with that Get Info window open, go back to your applications folder and locate the app again. Right click it. This time, choose Show Package Contents. And what
Yeah,
that's going to do is open up the application bundle so you can get to all the components that make up that app that's installed on your Mac. So Show Package Contents. Inside the new window that opens, you're going to see a folder called Contents. Double click that folder, Contents. And then inside there, you're going to see a folder called Resources. Inside Resources is where you're going to find the icon files that the developer packaged with this app. So double click the Resources folder to open that up, and then just scroll through it and look for the original app icon. And heck, you might even find a different icon in there that you like better, but look for the original app icon. The name may vary, but it will have the .icns extension on it. So whatever the name is, and it might, let's just call it appicon.icns. Once you locate the original app icon, remember that Get Info window you have open? Drag that icon you found to that itty bitty little icon in the top left of the Get Info window. And when you do, the icon for the app will instantly update. Now, unlike the Macintosh HD fix, this fix depends upon you not updating the app. No, I'm kidding. If you update the app, if or when the developer releases a new version of the app, it may include the new squircled version of the icon, or if they
yeah,
haven't yet updated the icon, and I have received some app updates since Tahoe that have not, what's going to happen is it's going to revert to the jailed icon,
yeah.
and you'll have to repeat this process again. And that's because what we're doing, these changes we're making, are inside the app bundle, and that app bundle is what's getting updated. So just keep that in mind. You can unjail your app icons. You can take them out of that squircle shape, but when the app gets updated, whether it's updated through the App Store or updated by the developer directly, you will need to repeat this process in order to, quote, fix them again. But that's how you do it. And it works really, really well. And you may decide that only the apps that you have sitting on your dock need to have that done to them. Or you may be bored and decide that you need to do it with all the apps in your applications folder, which is what I did when I got on a roll. But it's very easy to
Wow.
do, and you just have to locate that icon file, drop it into the Get Info window, and you're on your way. All right. Now let's talk
Cool.
about the most common fix that you see. There are people who are not happy with liquid glass. They don't like the look of it, and there's a very common fix that is offered out there. It's probably repeated several times within the top 10 search results when you search for fixing liquid glass, or whatever term you use to search for it, and that is to turn on reduced transparency. And reduced transparency is fantastic. It's been around in macOS for several years now. And I think, well, it might have come about after Apple first introduced the translucent menu bar, but maybe it was before then. I'm not quite sure. But it is an accessibility feature in macOS. And on Sequoia or earlier, if you enable reduced transparency, what happens is you end up with a light gray dock and you end up with a light gray menu bar, kind of the classic look and feel for OS 10 or Mac OS. Well, that functionality still exists in Tahoe. You can turn on reduced transparency and minimize some of the effects of liquid glass. Not all of them, but some. And as I said, it's one of the most common fixes that you're going to find when you search for solutions to reduce or eliminate liquid glass. But it is a great place to start. So if the padding and buttons don't bug you as much as they do me, because that problem still exists, but if the padding and buttons don't bug you as much as they do me, you can start with reducing transparency, and you do that by opening up your Mac system settings, go to accessibility. Under accessibility, click display, and then finally toggle reduce transparency. And you'll instantly see the menu bar turn light gray or solid blackish if you have dark mode on. And then likewise in the dock, it'll do the same thing. It'll turn to a solid and no longer have that translucency that it had before. As I said on the show before, I kind of wish that I could reduce transparency on the menu bar and not the dock, because the dock doesn't really bother me so much, but it's an all or nothing with reduced transparency. And by definition, it makes sense. It's under accessibility. It's for people that have issues, vision issues with seeing the icons or the text of the menus when transparency or translucency is on. So by turning on reduced transparency, it's going to be an all or nothing type thing. So in that regard, it makes sense. Unfortunately, it's not enough in my opinion, because the excessive padding and those ugly toolbar buttons remain. And not only do they remain, but they're enhanced. When you reduce transparency, the translucency that gives it the liquid glass-ish feel goes away. So now the toolbar buttons, those oval backgrounds, and the background behind the sidebar on the Finder only become enhanced. And
they might stand out more.
And I've shared photos with you of that, Darren, and so you can see that it really doesn't look anywhere near as good, and it's even worse in light mode. You would hope that they would go through and try all these different things, but there are so many different combinations and permutations of how you can set up your Mac that it would be somewhat impossible to test them all out. But that brings up what else we can do. So to go further, and this is how we're going to, excuse me, this is how we're going to wrap up the show, Darren. To go further and to truly fix things, again, in my opinion, we need to know about and we need to understand something that's called Solarium. So, what is Solarium? Well, Solarium is, for want of a better word, it's a code name, right? And I guess from a developer perspective, they wouldn't call it a code name. It's an internal reference that Apple uses to refer to what they publicly call liquid glass. In other words, it is the system or the components of macOS Tahoe that control the window background effects, the translucency, the shimmering effect that you see as you move stuff around, as you're looking at a red wallpaper behind your Finder window, and you see that nice little tinted red that Darren likes so much. Well, disabling Solarium makes app windows more opaque, and it makes them less susceptible to the blurring effect that you get with liquid glass. Now, the other benefit is that when you disable Solarium, it also reverts everything. The whole liquid glass look of Tahoe goes away. So by simply disabling Solarium, you end up with the same good old Finder experience that you had in Sequoia. It's amazing. Now, keep in mind, I no longer have a developer account with Apple. I did have one at one point many years ago. I also generally don't install pre-release public betas on my Macs. So not only do I discover the benefits of Apple's annual Mac OS releases when they're made public, but I also discover problems with them when those annual releases are made public. So I'm discovering problems with Tahoe, or what I perceive to be problems, along with everyone else. I'm also fairly ignorant of terms like Solarium because, again, not having a developer account, I don't have the inside information like, oh, this is what we refer to liquid glass as internally, right? Internally, if you want to enable liquid glass, you're enabling Solarium on your app. So those are the kind of things I'm not aware of, and I learn about them later as I try to find solutions. So it's with these public releases that I begin searching for solutions to what I deem to be problems. And personally, I think that's the benefit of being a Mac user versus any other Apple device, is that we can still generally, for now, make changes to how macOS operates. You have specifically shared tweaking apps as an essential app before, Darren. And the
Mm.
reason those tweaking apps exist is, well, let's see, what is it? Tweak UI, and then we have Onyx,
Tinker Tool
Tinker
was the main
Tool.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
all these apps exist because we still have the ability to fine tune how Apple's Mac OS works to suit our preferences. So that's great. Um, so as long as the Mac remains a fairly open system in that regard, we can often fix things. So I didn't give up hope when I saw what the Finder looked like under Tahoe. I just knew that immediately there wasn't a solution to it. But, you know, hey, the community is the community, and they are going to band together and find
Yeah.
a solution when there's one to be found. Which is why I said earlier, unless or until I can make some UI tweaks to the Finder. Well,
Hmm.
that day has come, and it came rather quickly. It came within a week of my upgrade to Tahoe. I found a solution. In fact, some of the solutions that I found were really only somewhat made public within the last couple weeks, and that's because it does sometimes take time to
Mm.
find
Yeah.
how to get around some of the issues that we might have. And I will say the day has come for now. Maybe. We're going to have to see how long it lasts. But if you are greatly unsatisfied with the reduced transparency fix as I was, it didn't quite do what I wanted. It did almost what I wanted, but it didn't quite do what I wanted. If you're not as satisfied with reduced transparency as I was, then this next solution is going to make you as happy as it made me. Now, having said that, I'm also going to share some of the problems that I encountered along the way, as well as
Mm.
a handy dandy GitHub page that lists all of the Solarium terminal commands and how they work. So let's get started. The very first thing I found was the ability to disable Solarium globally. What that means is that by issuing a particular terminal command, which I'll mention in just a moment, and you don't have to write this down as you're listening to the show. I will have links to that GitHub article that I mentioned a moment ago in the show notes. But by disabling Solarium globally, what that means is just turning it off entirely, no matter what app you're running on the Mac. And that includes things like the Finder, the dock, the control center, every little single component of the Mac that might depend upon Solarium will no longer be able to use it, right? So issuing that command and relaunching the Finder seemed to fix all the problems that I had with Tahoe. And that command is, and if you've ever done any kind of tweaking in the Mac via the terminal, you're going to understand the rough structure of this. But you open up a terminal window and you type in defaults, write, -G, and again, you don't have to write all this down, com.apple.swiftui.disable Solarium -bool. Now, what -bool means is you're about to give it a yes, no, or on-off type command. That's what that means. So -bool space yes. In other words, we're going to tell the Mac that we want to disable Solarium. -bool yes. And the -G earlier in the command is the switch to tell it we're disabling it globally. Okay? So that seemed to fix all the problems. No more ugly padding, no ugly toolbar buttons. The window corner radii went right back to where they should be. It was great.
Oh, okay.
And I even sent you a picture of it, Darren. I said, look, I can finally use my Mac
A
without getting
fixed
out
Tahoe.
the bucket of red sawdust. I can finally use my Mac. But unfortunately, it was short-lived. It was so short-lived. I think the solution lasted all of 15 minutes because I thought, hey, let me just make sure that it survives a reboot. That's always key to tweaks. Does the tweak that you are making, does it survive a reboot? Because if it doesn't, and you have to tweak it every time you reboot your Mac, I mean, heck, in your case, you'd be doing this every single day, Darren. But
That's right.
you know,
You'd be okay because you set your machine to go to sleep, so there's no
right.
worries.
So, if you have to do this every time you reboot, that would be awful. Well, I thought, let's
Yes.
see if it survives a reboot. Now, keep in mind, I was doing this. I was connected to my test Mac Mini remotely. It was in another town. I was connected to it remotely and I was issuing this terminal command and I was playing around with it. And after I rebooted and reconnected to it, I noticed two terrible, horrible things. For the most part, it does survive. The Finder was great. It still looked as good as it looked after I initially issued the command. But it turns out that disabling liquid glass globally introduces some really strange artifacts, like completely messing up the control center. The control center was all but unusable. I mean, you would think that the macOS design team got their hands on it. It was just awful. Snark, snark.
Wow.
It was awful. It was completely unusable. And it also made the background of the dock completely transparent, which I have to admit was kind of cool. I liked it a lot because it reminded me, I don't know if you remember the early days of the dock, but it was a perspective shelf and the icon sat on top of that shelf.
A mirrored shelf with reflections, no less.
Yeah. It wasn't the icons didn't sit on the background like they do now. They sat on it like
in the
it was
middle
a
of the shelf. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Skeuomorphic design. Skeuomorphic design is what it was. Steve Jobs' love for skeuomorphism is why we got a dock that looked like that. So the icons in the early days had a transparency behind them. So this transparent dock actually appealed to me because I just had the icons floating along the bottom of my screen, which I thought, hey, that's kind of cool, actually.
That's kind of neat.
But the control center not working right, and then other people reporting that Safari and some other apps that in Tahoe are designed to only use liquid glass, and you hinted at this earlier, Darren, anything that was designed like the dock, the control center, Safari, music, anything that in Tahoe was designed to be Tahoe specific didn't work right because the components that it needed
they're not expecting it.
Right. The components they needed to display properly weren't working. So it was a very short-lived experience to disable liquid glass globally. But it did what I wanted it to do. So I was almost there. Now, the worst part was that early reports were, and this was from macOS 26.1 beta testers, early reports were that this command didn't work under 26.1. So that would mean that even if it did work exactly as I hoped it would be a short-lived solution once 26.1 comes out. But as I mentioned to you and Eric, Darren, it was quite the bummer that Disable Solarium didn't work 100% as I hoped, but maybe I thought it was good enough. But I would still keep playing at it. I still wanted to figure out the solution to this problem. So it turns out the solution is to disable Solarium on a per app basis.
Indeed, not globally.
Not globally. And that playing and searching that I was doing led me to not only the ultimate solution for everyday users like you and me, and that I'll talk about in just a second, but it also led me to the GitHub page that I mentioned a moment ago, where I learned that while you could disable Solarium globally, as I had done, you could also do it on a per app basis. And I had suspected as such. I thought, well, certainly I must be able to disable it just for the Finder. I did consider, what is the Finder? Does that include Control Center? Does that include the menu bar? Does that include the dock? Or are those considered separate components? I wasn't sure at that point. But it was good to find that confirmation and to find the command to do it. And it only takes a slight modification. So rather than using the -G switch, and again, this will be in the link in the show notes if you're interested, so don't bother writing this down. What you do is, instead of the G switch, you substitute the bundle identifier. So in the case of the Finder, which app do I want to disable Liquid Glass for? It's the Finder. So I need the bundle identifier for the Finder. And the bundle identifier for the Finder is com.apple.finder.
Excellent.
So that gives us defaults, right, com.apple.finder, and then after that, com.apple.swiftui.disable Solarium -bool yes. That terminal command disables Solarium, aka Liquid Glass, for just the Finder. Boom.
Yeah.
That was the solution I was looking for. That makes Tahoe usable to me. So, what if there's a particular app that looks absolutely horrible under Tahoe's Liquid Glass, and there are some that exist? I mean, think open source, think third-party developers that are no longer actively developing their apps, but you're still using it. Think about developers that have not yet updated their app to be Liquid Glass compliant. There are apps that could, when you run them, just look horrible under Liquid Glass, but you don't know the bundle identifier. Well, here's how you find it. We're going to go back to our applications folder, and we are going to locate the app that isn't looking right. And we're going to right-click it or control-click it. We're going to show package contents, just like we had done when we changed the icon, show package contents. Inside the Finder window that opens, we're going to double-click the contents folder, and inside there, we are going to locate a file named info.plist. All right?
Cool.
Now, don't open that in Notepad. Don't open it in BBEdit. We're going to quick look it. There's a reason for that. Messing up this file can mess up your app. So we're going to quick look it, which is going to make finding what we need to find a little more difficult because we have to scroll through it. And if you're super, super careful, you can open it in text editor BBEdit, but I don't recommend it. Just quick look it. Ooh, quick look that info.plist. Quick look is perfectly capable of showing you the contents of that file. And if you're not sure how to quick look it, just select the file, single click it to select it, and press the spacebar, or right click it and choose to quick look it. But quick look that file, and then as you're scrolling through the contents of info.plist, look for CF bundle identifier. Look for that. And inside CF bundle identifier, alongside that, you're going to find the bundle identifier that we need in order to run this command. Now, in my notes, I'm just picking on Affinity Photo, but under Affinity Photo, when I right-clicked and showed package contents, went into the contents folder, located info.plist, and quick looked it, I was able to find the bundle identifier for Affinity Photo is com.seriflabs.affinityphoto2. So there you go. By substituting com.seriflabs.affinityphoto2 for com.apple.finder in that command, we would be disabling Solarium or disabling Liquid Glass for Affinity Photo specifically. So that's how that works. This is all available to us within macOS.
Yeah, it's built in.
We have to type in these long terminal commands, but they're there. So that's a lot of work, especially if you're looking to disable Solarium or Liquid Glass on multiple apps, but not necessarily system-wide. Now, in my case, as I've shared already, it's really only the Finder that got me running to bend over the nearest trash can. But for you, it might be another app. Or maybe you want that transparent dock. And I might still do this because I really like that transparent dock. So if you disable Solarium for the dock, you get the transparent background. So awesome. But for you, it may be a different app. It may not be the Finder. You may be perfectly happy with that, but maybe you want to disable it for photos or a third-party app or something. It's a lot of work to dig around within the package contents files. It's a lot of work to type out these long commands. It's a lot of work to remember what these commands are. So that brings us to this week's essential app. And this app is called SolidGlass. And its purpose is exactly as you might suspect. Its purpose is to turn off liquid glass. And it is as broad as that. You can turn off liquid glass globally with it, or you can turn off liquid glass on a per app basis. And that's the extra trick it has up its sleeve, because it's not just the global switch, which, as we learned, isn't necessarily the best way to go. It also gives you a list of every single app on your Mac. I mean, every single Mac. When I run it on my Mac, there's like 200 apps that come up. And it offers a simple toggle, just a little click, and it toggles it on, or I should say toggles it off. And if you click it again, it toggles it back on again. And that simple toggle allows you to enable or disable Solarium, aka Liquid Glass, per app without needing to, 1, look up the bundle identifier, and 2, needing to type in that long terminal command. Now, currently, the version 1.2 of the app, it's actually been making rapid progress, thanks to the feedback of the users who are adopting the app to disable Liquid Glass globally or on a per app basis. But some of its most useful features, in my opinion, include the ability to list only Apple apps. That greatly reduces the list of apps that you have to scroll through. So, for example, in my case, I really only wanted to disable it on the Finder, so I switched on the setting that said only display Apple apps. Great. So it gives you that capability. It also gives you the ability to auto restart an app after disabling or enabling Liquid Glass, which is necessary. So in the case of the Finder, if you do, I did forget to mention that. If you run the terminal command to disable Liquid Glass in the Finder, you do have to relaunch the Finder. And you can do that by either restarting your Mac or by going to force quit and then selecting Finder and clicking relaunch. That's important. Well, SolidGlass will do that for you automatically.
Does that for you? Yeah.
Once you toggle that switch, not only will it enable or disable Liquid Glass for that app, but it will also relaunch the app so that the effect takes place immediately. So that is really cool. And then Oh, it also gives you the ability to show icons of the apps in the list, and that helps make them easier to identify. And then additionally, the app will also, and I think this is super, super handy, the app will also give you a little warning for apps where disabling liquid glass may not work as expected. So,
Ooh, that's
for
nice.
example, as we already talked about, Control Center, contacts, books, the dock, and FaceTime. All of those indicate that there might be display issues if you disable liquid glass. And remember, sometimes those anomalies aren't so bad, like that completely transparent dock. So give it a try. You know, if you disable liquid glass for an app and it looks wonky, like Safari goes wonky if you disable liquid glass, just click the switch and turn it back on again. So Solid Glass is definitely a handy little app to have if you would like to restore a little sanity to your Tahoe running Mac, and there's really no magic to it. The app simply does what we can otherwise do via the terminal without all that typing. And like the terminal command, disabling liquid glass is reversible if you don't like how it looks. Now, there is a big old caution, and I mentioned this a moment ago, but I'm going to mention it again because it is important. There is a big old caution that you have to keep in mind if you upgrade to Tahoe and hope that running something like Solid Glass will be the end of liquid glass. And that is that disabling liquid glass is not currently working in newer versions of Tahoe 26.1. That's beta. It may be a bug. It may be a change to how the command works. Or maybe Apple removed it entirely, which I tend to have my doubts for that because at this point, this early in the game, that functionality still needs to be there. So I think this is either a bug in 26.1 or they have simply either changed the name of it, like perhaps they're calling it, I don't know, Teddy the Wonder Lizard. No, maybe they're calling it Disable Solarium 2 or something. Maybe somehow they've changed the
Yes,
command so that it, the exact
it's
verbiage of it
accessed
doesn't work.
differently, maybe. Yeah.
But one way or the other, it's not working under Tahoe beta, 20 Tahoe 26.1 beta, um, and we don't know why, and we probably won't know until after the final release of Tahoe 26.1. So in
Yeah.
my case, I am actually going to hold off upgrading any other Macs to Tahoe until we know for certain what 26.1 will bring when it comes to Solarium. But for those who like to play with the option to disable liquid glass on their Tahoe running Macs, a link to Solid Glass will be in the show notes. Oh, and did I mention it's free? It is a free app, and you will find it on GitHub. And I would also like to wrap up by thanking the forum threads and the comments of both OS 10 Daily and Reddit that ultimately pointed me to both the Solarium terminal commands and to Solid Glass.
Excellent.
Yeah. And with that said, Darren, I think that's going to do it for this episode of For Mac Eyes Only.
Yeah. I think we killed Tahoe a bit there,
Uh,
but we extolled some of its virtues.
oh, we extolled quite hey, an hour's worth of virtues for Tahoe.
Oh,
Let Mike rant a little
yeah.
bit.
It's a good point. Good point.
I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, I do love to get your letters, so if you have any comments about the show, a tip to share, a software or hardware problem with your Mac, be sure to leave your favorites in the comments of this week's show notes found at formaceyeesonly.com, or you can drop me a line, mike@formaceyeesonly.com. And also, do be sure to subscribe to the show's YouTube channel at youtube.com/FMEOTV and click that little notification bell so you can find out when we are going live. You can join the chat room and catch all the behind the scenes stuff that doesn't make the final cut of the show. Hey, Darren, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
The best way to be to email me at Darren@thebackersonly.com. Yeah, sorry, I was distracted there. I was just admiring your how to contact us screen, which
Oh,
ironically had a nice there we go, had a nice glass panel. As you can see over the TV logo, it's distorting the logo underneath in a very glassy and pleasing way.
it is, and yeah. Some of this will be cut out for the audio version of the show, but and then we'll let you share again how folks can get in touch with you. But yeah, the interesting thing is I came up with those panels long before we knew what liquid glass was going to look like. It was
There you go.
it
You
was
saw the
something I
future.
was yeah, it was something I was playing with for Macstock, and I liked the look of it. And then, admittedly, I did tweak it a little bit once Apple showed us liquid glass in June. I did tweak it a little. I had come up with these designs. It's more of a flat design. In other words, if you look at what we're showing right now, there's no borders
Yeah,
anymore around
yeah.
the videos. I used to have big borders around them, and I got rid of
Uh,
that,
no, no,
flattened
it's a subtle
everything,
shadow.
subtle shadow, and then for it's very pronounced on the Macstock um, scenes for Ecamm Live, but that translucency
Yeah,
was something I
it's
was
nice.
playing with just so that you could still see the background. And then after Apple announced Liquid Glass, I'm like, oh, well, that looks familiar. And then I added a very, very, very thin, slight border around it just to give it a little bit more definition. And then you're right,
Yeah,
I did add a blur to it as well to um, to do exactly what you said, to give it kind of that frosted glass look. So yeah,
yeah, works really nice.
yeah,
You
yeah.
should be one of the Apple designers.
Please, they wouldn't listen to me. Uh,
Excellent.
anyway, so what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you, Darren?
Cool. If anyone wants to send me a message or ask me a question, they can send me an email at darren@formacisonly.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Darren for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time. All right, we're going to say goodbye to the live stream. Give me a second, Darren, to pop up the end card, and I'll be right with you.
Okey-doke.
Bye, live stream.
Bye.